Hi, this is also Maria Bradley. I'm here for Romance Author Storytime, and I'm going to be reading from my book, Loki Ascending, which here you get probably the mirror image of what that looks like. Loki Ascending is the third book in my Viking Warriors series, and you can read them all as standalones or you can read them in order. And I'm going to read a short excerpt for you guys today. And what you need to know if you're not familiar with the Viking Warriors is that the Vikings have been sent back from Valhalla by Odin and Freya in order to protect current time humanity from Loki and his minions. And if you're following the series, then this book, which is the third in the series, is probably going to be really fun for you because this is when Loki finally steps on the page. We've only seen his minions so far in the series. And also, if you are a follower of the series, then you probably like this book because this is when Scott and Iria finally get together. They have been sort of a slow burner couple for a long time. So if you haven't followed the series, then a couple things to set up the scene. The Viking warriors have an inner warrior inside them that's called a berserker. And this is why they are basically undefeatable in battle. And it's also sort of an inner beast that claims their soulmates. So the Vikings have them, but not the humans. And Iria is a Valkyrie. She's come back from Valhalla. And Scott is human. He's also the brother of the Viking warriors tribe up in eastern state Washington. So Scott has been out on a mission, and he's just come back. Scott and Iria hasn't seen each other in about a year. Scott has been avoiding her by going to fight for a different warrior tribe, and he's been hurt in the process. And so he has to have Iria take a look at his injury because Iria is their healer. So he's just been to take a shower, and he's showing up in the room where Iria has all the medical supplies, and she's about to take a look to see what's happened to his shoulder, where one of Loki's minions, the Wolverines, basically stabbed him with its claws. So here we go. Iria was almost done pulling the antidote from the vial into the syringe when the swish of fabric caressing skin made her look up. Freya's mercy. He'd taken off his shirt. She had seen and touched his body many times while he'd been her patient, and she'd been drawn to the sleek physique then, but this was something completely different. His shoulder had somehow become broader, and the expanse of sun-kissed skin covering well-defined muscles was too much for her sleep-deprived brain to process. She stared at the narrow strip of hair that started below his belly button and disappeared into his jeans, the syringe and vial in her hands forgotten. Her berserker growled and paced in tight circles. "Are you okay?" Scott's words brought Iria out of her stupor, but she had to breathe deeply before she could center herself enough to calm her inner beast. "Yeah, fine, just tired." She tried for a smile, but judging by the worried look he threw her, it probably looked more like a grimace. "You should rest before the evening meal." "I'll try." She finally managed to finish prepping the syringe and placed it on the table. Scott reached for her hands, clamping them between his. "Iria, you have to take care of yourself. You are of no use to anyone if you drive yourself to exhaustion." She couldn't meet his gaze. The heat from his hands touching hers distracted her to the point where she held her breath. She slowly pulled away from his grip and inhaled deeply. "You sound like my brother." She tried for another smile. "Pekka's not wrong." His dark eyes studied her, but she still couldn't meet his gaze. He would see too much, and right now she was too raw to hold up her emotional walls. "Let's take a look at your shoulder." She winced at the false perkiness of her tone, but quickly stepped to the side so she could look closer at the back of his deltoid. As she leaned closer, she had to stop herself from deeply inhaling. He smelled of the soap he'd used in the shower, clean and citrusy, and underneath that, there was a unique male scent that made her think of open desert skies and dry winds. This was ridiculous. He had been her patient for almost a year back in Washington State. She'd never felt the need to sniff him before. She mentally shook herself back into reality and reason. Her inner warrior disagreed. It wanted to linger on Scott's delicious smell and growled its disappointment when Iria forced it to stop scenting the air. Lusting after the queen's brother was not proper. Even if he had not been her patient, Iria knew she was not a worthy partner to him. The beast resisted, but at least it calmed down and stopped pacing. Ilya swabbed his bicep with the alcohol pad and gave him the shot of antidote. Scott's jaw clenched as the needle went in. I don't think I'll ever be a fan of injections, he said in a low voice. Oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking. Ilya fumbled as she put the medical supplies in a plastic bag and dropped them into a trash can. She shook her head. That was so insensitive. You weren't insensitive. I get that you're doing this to take care of me. His dark eyes were intense. It's not the same. He didn't have to tell her what he was thinking. While captive in the lab, Scott and Naya had endured shot after shot of toxic chemical cocktails that would supposedly make them into super soldiers. Ilya should have known better than to just jab a needle into him without warning. Let me just have another look at the shoulder, she said, when the pause in conversation became loaded with too much tension. Scott hissed when she prodded the injury. I guess it's a little bit more serious than I let on. Ilya studied the puncture wounds. They had stopped bleeding and looked clean. I don't think the claws hit anything vital. It looks like muscle damage only. She placed her fingers on the injury and closed her eyes briefly. Although she never used powers to heal anymore, so her sensitivity to magic allowed her to detect what she thought of as troubles. If a wound was infected or if an injury extended to vital organs, she could sense the body's distress and pinpoint the underlying cause quicker. Scott's injury didn't give off any troubled vibes. These should heal fine on their own, she said, withdraw her fingers, and had to once again clamp down on her connection with the berserker as it hissed his disapproval when the skin-to-skin contact ended. She'd never had these type of control issues with her inner warrior before. Scott stood, and Ilya stumbled as she took a step back to get away from all this delicious bare skin. He grabbed her elbow, and to her horror, she swayed toward him. She had to put a hand on his chest to steady herself and avoid smacking her nose into his collarbone. Heat traveled from where her palm touched his skin and up her arm. The air between them crackled with electricity. Her nipples tightened into hard peaks. Heat pulled low in her abdomen and then moved even further south. The berserker threw back its head and howled in approval. There was no external sound, but under her palm, Ilya felt an echo of that growl vibrating deep in Scott's chest. She looked up to find him staring at her, shocked. What the fuck just happened? She had no idea. I need sleep, she whispered, her voice cracking. She had to get away from him before she completely lost her mind. She quickly gathered up her medical bag and fled the room. Scott called her name, but she ignored it. If she had to drug herself into slumber, she'd do it. Anything to regain control and composure. Bad things happened to people whenever she lost control, especially if she cared about them. I hope that was okay. I am not very good at reading my own stuff. And Loki Ascending is available wherever you buy your books from, both in hard copy, in ebook, and you can also get it on audio through Audible or through Dreamscape Media. Thank you for participating in Romance Author Storytime. Keep checking the CASA Instagram account because there's other people that have read and there will be other people that will read. And I also want to take this opportunity for a big shout out to the Sourcebooks people who are all working from home but are still working hard for all their authors in terms of doing promotions and also working hard for all the readers to get the books out to them. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's staying healthy. I'll see you guys soon.